Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Sunday Night Live with me, Jonny Lipsham, here at jonnylipshamstudios.co.uk, here in the southeast sort of area of Scotland. And as you can see, I'm wearing the exact same jumper as I wore on Wednesday. Or you would think so. But no, you would be wrong. I actually have two identical jumpers. And so it to all intents and purposes, you could be forgiven for thinking that I'm wearing the exact same jumper as I did on Wednesday and possibly also on last week's show. But you'd be wrong because I'm not. This is the other one. I have two. I also have a blue one like this one as well. It's got blue and black instead of green and black. I like rugby jumpers. Sorry. Yes, I am passionate about rugby. It's one of my favourite sports, and I'm a huge Scotland fan, obviously, because of that. So I have a lot of different rugby jerseys, including this one, the other one that's like this one, and my blue one. And, of course, I've got a Scotland one as well, which I don't think fits me anymore, sadly. But there we go. There. You probably were just like, oh I never noticed. I had to make small talk at the start of the show, so that's why I mentioned it. So, by way of kind of just getting things started, as people come into the show and I adjust my seat, so I make sure that I'm not leaning forward for the entire hour, because when I do that, my back hurts. So, move my chair in just a wee bit. So, let's see. First in the door was Craig at the W5 family. And then almost, but not quite, 24 hours later, Billy came in at 3:45 a.m. UK time. Wow, good for you. Neil Thompson is here as well. Boris Dancy is here. Keith from Radio Top Frumpet is also here. We got Kyle Draduziak here. We got Dwayne, we got Stephen Wilson, we've got Don Oliver, and so far that is all we have. We've only got 11 people here, so this could be a very short show. But hopefully a few more people will jump in as the evening goes on. So if you're watching and you are not a subscriber, you'll notice that the chat is in subscriber only mode. I have that every week. So if you would like to ask a question, or even if you just want to say hello, and that's fine, you will need to subscribe to the channel. So please do that now. And when you do that, give it 2 minutes, and then the chat will be available to you. And you will be able to engage, and you'll be able to ask questions and stuff like that, because that's what this show is all about. It's a Q&A show, basically. And the focus of Sunday Night Live, for those of you that have never seen this show before, is that it is all to do with Studio One and recording and mixing and mastering and that kind of thing. I do another show on Wednesdays at the same time, which is to do with songwriting, arranging, composing, and music theory and that kind of stuff. So this is a very kind of different show, but it's all music related, which is what this show is what this channel is all about. It's all about music, either writing music or mixing and mastering and all of that, and music production and everything that goes into that. So that's what this channel is for. So we got 12 people here now, which is a small improvement on the 11 we had a minute ago. And just to say, also, please hit the notification bell, Because if you hit that notification bell and you select all notifications, what will happen is YouTube will let you know either when my show is about to start, or it will let you know that I have put a video out. I have published a video. I have a bunch of videos coming this year. I've already released at least one new video. There are going to be more coming because, you know, there's more stuff that is queued up from Presonus that's going to be coming throughout the course of 2025. There's a lot of stuff, both hardware and software. So stay tuned, because I'm going to be doing videos on mostly the software stuff, but occasionally I might even do a video on some of the new hardware stuff. We'll see. But it's mostly going to be the new software stuff. So updates to Studio One and other things that are coming, which are awesome, by the way. They are awesome. That's all I'm going to say. They are fecking awesome. This year is very exciting for Studio One development. It's very exciting for Presonus software. It's very exciting just for Presonus as a whole, to be honest, this year. And then next year is going to blow your minds. Trust me, it really is going to blow your minds. But that's all I can really say about what's yet to come. Other than be excited for it, because it's going to be an exciting time. It really is. So if you want to ask a question, do what Dwayne has done. Start your question with @Jonny Lipsham Studios, because if you do that, what that does is that highlights my name in red, and then I know it's a question and not just you guys talking amongst yourselves. I'm happy for you guys to talk amongst yourselves, but if you want to ask a question, that's the best way to grab my attention. Because otherwise questions can just get totally lost in the chat and I never see them, and then you guys don't get an answer. So I would very much appreciate it if you do the @Jonny Lipsham Studios thing. Neil says, some of us are old enough to remember when soft copy and software were new terms. Yeah, and people like you, Neil, you know, you were probably a teenager during the American Civil War period, I suspect. I'm kidding. I'm just teasing you. All right, so Dwayne does have the first question. So let's get to his question. And if you do have a question, then please get it into the chat, because this is a Q&A show. And so without questions, I can't give any answers. And therefore, it'll be a very short show. And I like to get the full hour in if I can. But that's kind of dependent partly on you guys. So Dwayne says, is it possible to stretch a vocal note from an eighth note to a quarter note? Yes, it is. You can use stretching in Studio One, and it's just as easy as you would think it would be. To be honest, sorry, I'm just loading up a new song so that we can actually take a look at this. So I'm going to create an audio track, and all of that will do just fine. So we'll go screen over here, and we'll get me up in the top corner there. All right, so we have this little track here. We're going to arm it to record, but we're not going to hit the monitor button, because then you'll hear me twice, if not 3 or 4 times. And nobody wants to hear me 4 times. Let's just face facts here, guys. So I'm going to record something, and then we're just going to randomly grab a note, and we are going to apply some time stretching. Now, bear in mind, folks, I've not done this for a little while, so it's going to take me just a little while to remember how to do it, but this can be done. So let's record something. So I'm going to go, let's see. Now, what's your example here? Ooh, ah, ooh. And you want to stretch the last ooh, I think, is what you want to do. So if I do like ooh, ah, ooh, and do that as eighth notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, ooh, ah, ooh, like that, maybe. Do that as eighth notes. And then we can see if we can stretch that last thing. Now, bear in mind, the more stretching you do to audio, And the more you stretch something out, the more you are going to get artifacting. There's no way around it, because basically you're taking a piece of audio and you're stretching everything, transients, formants, the works. And so eventually you'll get to a point where it does just start to break up. And when that happens, you are beyond the point of it being useful. Okay. And that's nothing to do with Studio One. That's just how audio works, essentially. It's unfortunate. I mean, the time stretching and the audio bend technology that is into Studio One is made by Z-Plane. And Z-Plane are incredible. They are pioneering all kinds of technologies. And they have done for decades. But really, they are on the cutting edge of being able to stretch things in time and compress things in time whilst preserving as much of the audio data as possible. All right, so let's do this. Let's give ourselves a click, because I want to make sure that this is kind of as close to being in time as I can get it. So hang on just a second. All right, here we go. Ooh, ooh. Okay, so what I did there was I did that to quarter notes, but you'll want to do this to eighth notes. So let's get rid of that. So if I go ooh, something like that. Let's try that. Ooh. All right, there we go. So let's see what we can do with this. So I'm going to open this up a little bit. You know what? I think I might have actually. I don't think I even need to melodyne that note. I think I'm going to turn it up a bit though. And of course, we're going to zoom it in. Ooh. Of course, we've recorded the click as well. Ooh. I'm a little bit sharp on that first note. But look at that, right on the money in terms of time. So what we want to do is we want to apply a little bit of the audio bend tool. And what we're going to do is we're going to here we go. We're going to use the bend tool. That just moves everything. Let's see. And that shrinks everything. Ooh. And you can see there that actually didn't really do what we wanted. I'm trying to stretch that out to make that last longer. Ooh. That's probably about as good as I'm going to get with the material that I've got, which is by dragging. Let's say I want to make this shorter. That's earlier in time. I actually want to make this shorter. Gonna let me do that. Ooh. Okay. Let's go back to this guy. Let's do a little fade out here. Ooh. There we go. Ooh. But as you can see, I can't make this last much longer than that because it just won't do it. Let's see. If I turn off snap, maybe that might help me. No, it's not letting me stretch it any further than that. Ooh. I can make it start so it starts right on the beat there. Ooh. But that's as good as I can get it. I'm trying to drag to stretch it, and it's not really stretching any further than that, unfortunately. Ooh. Option drag the event. Well, I'm not on a Mac, so option is not going to be an option. That's funny. And yeah, the alt doesn't do anything. Yep. Yeah, all that does is just stretch things out in time. We don't want to make this out of time. We want to turn this last note into a quarter note instead of a half note, instead of what it was. So all that is done is just slow it down. That's not what we want to do. So let's Control Z that. So if I alt drag, what that does is that stretches the whole event. I don't want to stretch the whole event. I want to stretch just this bit. So what I could do is I could split at this point, and then I could alt and drag this guy. Perhaps, and then do a crossfade between the two. That might work. Ooh. And then I maybe need to But unfortunately, as you can see the issue that we've created there. Yes, I now have made this turn into a quarter note instead of an eighth note. So that ostensibly we've done what we've wanted to do. However, you can hear the problem. It's slowed down in time. Yes, it stretched the note out, but it has slowed it down in time. So this quarter note is at a different tempo to these eighth notes. So it starts a little late as well. So let's see if we can fix that. Let's see if we can fix that. Let's move that just a little bit more. So unfortunately, you can hear the problem for yourselves, guys. Basically, yes, we have stretched an eighth note into a quarter note, but you can hear what has happened by doing that. I was trying to use the audio bend to basically prevent this issue, and I couldn't bend it enough. So doing it using the alt and drag way, what that does is that changes the tempo of this event. So if I was to select this event here and pull this up here, you'll see that there is some speed up applied compared to this one. This one has speed up set to 1. This has speed up set to 0.53. Which means it is half the speed of these eighth notes. Now, technically, yes, if you take an eighth note and you slow it down by half, you're going to get a quarter note, because that's how math works and that's how notation works. But you can hear that the audio has actually been slowed down rather than just the note elongated. So that's what I was trying to do with the bend tool. I was actually trying to elongate the note rather than actually slow it down. So I've achieved the result, but what you've ended up with is maybe less than desirable. And actually you can hear the artifacting there as well. So the answer to the question fundamentally is, yes, you can do that. I don't want it to change pitch. Yes, and it doesn't change pitch. It's still exactly the same pitch. Right? So no pitch has changed, because the reason why that has not happened is if you go and you look in here, you'll see that we are using the drums time stretch algorithm, which does not change the pitch. Now, if I put tape on here then you would get a different result. You would get the pitch change as it slows down. But we don't have that. We're using drums. Okay? So when it's in drums, doesn't change the pitch. It's only when you've got it in tape mode that it will change the pitch when you slow something down or speed it up. Okay, so you don't have to you don't have to use bend markers. Dwayne, I don't know what the hell that means. I think you're trying to say, don't you have to have bend markers? You don't have to have bend markers. You can just use the bend tool. Bend markers will help, but in this particular situation, I didn't want to do that because I don't need to quantize it. Okay, so bend markers are great for quantizing. I don't want to quantize. All I wanted to do was basically stretch that note out. And I was trying to use just the bend tool to do it. So, I mean, in fact, I could just close off this panel altogether. And just use just the bend tool. So, yeah, so that's kind of how it works fundamentally. But as you can hear, results are not great. Especially at the end there, you can hear it breaks up a little bit because we're slowing it down. So fundamentally, the best thing to do is make sure that the vocalist sings the correct note lengths, the correct durations of the notes. If they don't, yes, you can do something like this, but is it flawless? Is it perfect? No. If it's a lead vocal, that's going to be a problem for you. If it's backing vocals, and maybe you've got 4 background vocal parts, and maybe just one of them didn't quite sing the right note length, then sure, doing it this way, the artifacting is not going to be an issue because, to be honest, it's not going to be heard. Because it will be masked by all the other voices that are going on. So in this particular case, it's exposed, it's on its own, it's the lead vocal just on its own, you can hear the artifacting. But in the context of a mix, you might not hear the artifacting so badly because there's other things that the ear is going to be engaged with and it's not going to hear the artifacting. Audio engineers will hear it. Most ordinary end consumer listeners won't hear it, so they won't be put off by the fact that there might be just a little bit of artifacting in the vocal. But just bear in mind that when you start doing things like compression and limiting and that kind of stuff and parallel compression to the vocal, it's going to emphasize all of those things, including the artifacting. So bear that in mind. If this is a lead vocal that you're dealing with, Dwayne, then this method may or may not work for you, and you may just have to put up with artifacting. But if it's a background vocal, like I say, then sure, this will work and it will be sufficiently buried in the mix. It won't be a big deal. I thought we had to use bend markers. No, you don't have to. You don't have to. Bend markers are great if you are wanting to quantize and place a specific note in time to the grid. That's where bend markers are cool, but you don't have to use them. So, but that is a fantastic question. There is no doubt about that being a great question. Matt Cochran's here. He says, howdy gents, had to cut down a windblown tree. Yeah, there is a decent amount of storm activity going on at the moment. And in fact, on another tab, I'm following a live a live storm chase at the moment. I've just got it going on in the background and it's muted so you don't hear it. But yes, I have it on in the background and I'm trying to figure out where they are at the moment. Yeah, I don't quite know where they are exactly. See if I can find out exactly where they are. If I can get the stream to refresh, that would help. Stand by, folks. So I know some of you are going to be affected by the storm activity that's going on. So maybe this will be helpful information. Where are they currently? They are in Clay County, Arizona, I believe, is where they are just at the moment. So there you go. So if you're in that Clay County area, be aware of the weather, folks, because there is strong tornado potential in that area just now. In fact, I think there is a tornado warning in that area. So if you're in that area, then please be weather aware and be alert to storm alerts and that kind of thing. But anyway, back to what we're doing. Neil says he's got Ryan Hall y'all live fired up but muted on another workspace. Yeah. That I've got Reed Timmer and Team Dominator. That's who I've got on my other feed just now, but it does seem to be buffering quite a bit at the moment. Anyway, back to the music and back to Studio One. So Matt, I hope you're okay and I hope you are keeping safe. Let's see who else is here, who else has arrived whilst I was doing that little demonstration. Dave is here. Hello, Dave. Good to see you, buddy. And it looks like Secret Squirrel and Lowen's are both here as well. Awesome. Kyle says, I was part of the first generation to have a home computer, 1978, Apple Plus. Oh, the Apple II Plus. Nice. Let's see. When did we personally get a computer in our house? We actually got one quite late because, well, we were very poor when I was a kid. So we got a computer in our house quite late on, and that was an Atari ST. So, and that was when I got that for my studio. But it was like the only computer in the whole house. But our school had been equipped with BBC Basics and some Nimbus computers back in the 80s. I remember those, but no, I don't remember the Apple II Plus. But there we go. Let's see. Neil says, I saw an excellent YouTube video yesterday on the Raytown Productions channel about unintended phase issues when using equalizers. It's really well explained and well presented. A lot of times I disagree with some of the Raytown production guys' content and want to throw things at the screen, but this particular recent video is bang on. Yeah, you certainly can. Like, for example, if you do a lot of filtering, so, and I'm not just talking high-pass filtering, but if you're doing a lot of filtering with EQs, yeah, you can unintentionally create phase problems, especially if you are dealing with things like drums, where you have multiple mics capturing the same instrument, i.e. the drum set. And you start doing some high-pass filtering here, there, and everywhere on different parts of the drum set. You can definitely create some phasing problems between the snare drum as captured by your direct snare mics and also as captured by your overheads and things like that. So yeah, you can certainly do that. So EQ is a great tool. You just got to use it with care, like anything else. You can over EQ, you can under EQ, you can EQ the wrong things. You can not do enough EQ. And equally, you can over compress. And you can under compress, and you can not use compression when actually you need to use some compression. So yeah, you can certainly create some unintended phasing issues with EQ. Now, the thing to bear in mind is most of the time you won't hear it, but sometimes you will. It depends what you've done. But like everything, EQ with care. In fact, anything you do with mixing, do it with care and do it with intent. And I don't mean, kind of pitching a tent. I mean, do it intentionally so that every move you make with a fader, with a panning controller, with EQ, with compression, with reverb, with delay, whatever it is you're doing in your mix, do it with intent. Do it with intentionality, so that, sometimes you might find it helpful to kind of like ask yourself the why question when you're about to reach for that EQ or that compressor, or you're about to send to a reverb or a delay for a particular channel, or you're about to pan something left or right. Always ask yourself, why am I doing that? What's the reason? What's my intent? Why am I putting that alto saxophone on the left? Or, rather than the center or the right? What is the reason for that? Have a reason for why you do everything. Even if it is just applying just a simple little high-pass filter at 40 hertz. Have a reason for doing it. Don't just do it because you've seen, other YouTubers, myself included, who have made instructional tutorial videos basically saying high-pass filter. There's a lot of videos out there that basically say high-pass filter at 100 hertz unless it's a kick drum or a bass instrument. And whilst I can see the rationale for that, because the idea behind that kind of concept is you want to clear out low end from everything else in your mix so that the kick drum and the bass instruments have room. So ostensibly, the concept is good. However, if you are just doing it because somebody said in a video, high pass at 100 hertz, except for a kick drum or a bass instrument. Don't just set, the high pass filter arbitrarily at 100. Listen to your mix. Listen to your tracks as they are for you. Because sometimes doing that 100 hertz high pass filter will work and will be a good thing. Sometimes it won't be. And especially for certain instruments, maybe it doesn't need a high pass at 100 hertz. And maybe actually it's not going to get in the way of the bass or the kick drum. And in actual fact, there are other ways in which you can create space for your kick drum and your bass instruments without needing a high pass filter. So, there's a lot of bad information out there. There's a lot of good information out there, but don't just do something because somebody said to do it. Unfortunately, when we are learning something, that's often a phase we have to go through, that we do things because we hear people say that this is a good thing to do, and so we go with it because we trust that they know more than we do. And so that's what you do. You go ahead and you start applying high-pass filters at 100 hertz on everything apart from bass instruments and kick drums. But then the more you do this, the more hopefully you will realize, actually, whilst that will work on some mixes, it won't work on others. And you will find that some mixes come together really easily and other mixes don't come together really easily. And it could just be that they don't need that arbitrary high-pass filtering at 100 hertz. Your source tracks should tell you what they need. Granted, when you are starting out and you are a beginner, you don't know that yet, and you don't know how to hear that yet. You don't know how to hear what you need, what kind of amount of high-pass filtering you need. Now, I'm not against high-pass filtering. I think high-pass filtering is a good thing. I think it's helpful. Otherwise, why would EQs have high-pass filters on them? Pretty much every EQ has a high-pass filter on it. There are some notable exceptions, like a Pultec EQ doesn't have a high-pass filter on it. But, a lot of EQs do, especially parametric ones. A lot of them have high-pass filters on them because it's a useful thing to have. But set that high-pass filter where you need it rather than where somebody says you should have it. So, and that really is actually the only way that you learn how to effectively high-pass filter, is by learning how to hear, learning how to listen for what the track needs, where that high-pass filter needs to be set. And really the only way to do it is to just go through and just persevere and learn by doing. It's the only way to do it. So I'm not against high-pass filtering, but I am against arbitrarily high-pass filtering. Don't just high-pass filter because somebody says you should. High-pass filter because the track needs it. Or the song needs a lot of high-pass filtering. Or the way these particular tracks were recorded, there's a lot of low-end build-up. You know, so what the track needs, what the track wants, that's where you learn how to mix for what's required, rather than what is kind of a standard method. What's the word I want? Pedagogy. You know, don't just do something because somebody says do it. Do it because you know it's going to work. And I'm aware that when you're a beginner, you don't know that yet. Neil says, yes, exactly. If the same source is being captured in more than one place, EQing one of them can cause complete phase destruction when combined with the others. Yes, at certain frequencies. Yes. 100% right. 100% right. And actually, there's not an awful lot of videos out there that actually tackle that issue, to be fair. So the fact that this particular YouTuber is actually dealing with that, I think is great. I think a lot more content needs to be put out there on effective EQ. And particularly when you are EQing drums in particular. There's lots of stuff on how to compress drums. There's lots of stuff on how to parallel compress drums. There's not an awful lot of stuff out there on the best way to EQ a whole drum set and make sure that you keep things in phase. And, you know, and also the same could be said for any instrument that is captured with more than one microphone. And so, you know, that would also include guitar amps. Sometimes you might want to mic with a ribbon mic and an SM57. But you also might want to do multi-miking on a saxophone as well. I mean, I know that sounds ridiculous, but it's more commonplace than you realize, actually. There's I've been in studios, I've been involved in recordings either as a assistant recording engineer or actually involved in the session as a session player, where I've seen a tenor saxophone mic'd with a condenser mic and a dynamic mic. Both are there, both are set so that they're in phase together. And then you might also have room mics as well to capture the room, the saxophone in the room as well. So, and especially actually if you're recording samples. So like if you are creating sample packs and it's a saxophone sample pack, there may well be as many as 4 or 5 microphones on the saxophone. To give the end user options as to what kind of sound they might want from a saxophone. So yeah, you got to be very careful about how you filter at different points when you're recording anything that has been captured with more than one microphone. And Bobby Booth also says, remember, less is more. Definitely, less is more. You know, I see this more frequently than I like to admit, but I do get people sending me their Studio One sessions. And there was one guy's session I just couldn't load up. And then I found out why I couldn't load it up, because I ended up having to load it up on the Mac because I couldn't load it up on the PC, and it was nothing to do with my PC. It was to do with the fact that the guy had, I think 40 or so channels of audio. But on almost every channel, he had 10 to 15 plugins on pretty much every channel. And his issue was, he was saying, you know, the CPU meter maxes out into the red and then Studio One crashes. And I'm just like, yeah, I think I know why. You got way too many plugins. Uh, he had something like 240 plugins in the whole session. Which was mental. And I think of those, 17 were the same guitar amp sim, just like multiple instances of the same guitar amp sim. And so I talked back and forth with this guy. Turns out the reason why he had so many plugins was because he was basically experimenting as he was mixing. He was trying out different EQs and different compressors and things like that. But rather than, dragging one in, removing it, dragging another one, removing that, dragging another one, and removing that, which is what I would do. I mean, that's to me what makes sense. He would just drag them in until he had loads. And then if he didn't want, if he was not going to use one of them, he would just bypass. He would just hit the bypass button on that particular plugin. What he didn't realize was that even though they were bypassed, because they were loaded into the song, they were still loading into memory. He didn't realize that. He now knows better. So he went through and stripped out all the plugins that were in bypass, including all of those guitar amp sims, because basically he had been like experimenting with different amp setups for his guitars. And I think he had like 10 or 12 guitar channels. And he had like all of these amp sims stacked up on all of these guitar channels because he was experimenting with different setups. And I said, experimenting in and of itself is a great thing to do. But if you know that you've settled on a particular sound, unload the rest of the plugins. Unload all the rest of the instances of that amp sim. Because you are overloading your song. That's why it's crashing, because your memory can't handle all of those plugins, can't process the audio through all those plugins at the same time. So, yeah. That's kind of a little side issue there. Some very, very funny banter going on here. Dave says, drums, phasing is pretty much distance between capture. However, mic settings, selection play a good part in recording kits. Yeah, they definitely do. Different microphones will provide a different, a different microphone will provide a different frequency response and a different way of capturing a particular drum of the drum set. So, maybe an SM57 is what you want on a snare drum. Maybe it's not. I mean, that's kind of standard, but maybe you want something like an Earthworks, or maybe you want a CAD or something like that. There's plenty of different options for different mics, but you're absolutely right. The mics need to be in phase with each other. So, all your close mics need to be, kind of equidistant from each of the drums that they are capturing, so that the audio is hitting those mics at exactly the same time. And the same with your overheads. Your overheads need to be the exact same distance from the drum set, so that the audio from the drum set is hitting those overheads the exact same time. And that's kind of how you avoid or minimize phase problems. Does using on-off rather than bypass on an effect remove the effect from memory? I don't think it does. I think it basically stops the audio from passing through it, so it's not being processed, but I think it still is loaded into memory because it's still in the effects rack. And so because it's instantiated in the song, I think it's still loaded into memory. But if it's turned off, it's not going to process anything. So it's there, but it's not processing anything. So technically, it's not working, but it is instantiated into the song. So therefore, it's kind of still in memory. So yeah, I think once experimentation is fine, but I think once you settle on a sound, once you settle on the EQ, the compressor of choice, or the amp sim setup of choice, get rid of everything else. Just remove them all, so that you're just left with what you've got. Bypassing will leave it loaded and active, just bypass. Turning off will have it loaded in memory and just completely bypassed. Yes. On-off will affect CPU, not memory. Yes, that is correct. That is correct, guys. Good answers to the question. And as Bobby Booth says, way too many plugins. Yes. I always think less is more. I tend to use a very simple set of EQ and compression and reverb and delay tools. I don't have 100 million plugins. I don't. I think the most I have now is 170 plugins. That's all I've got. And that includes everything that comes with Studio One. So my third-party plugins, I maybe have, I don't know, 20, 30, 40, 50. I don't have loads because I don't think I need loads. I don't want to be in a position where I have, when I'm mixing a song, I have 50 different EQs to choose from and 50 different compressors. I want to be able to quickly and easily grab what I need, drag it into the song. With no fuss, no muss, no problem. It's there. I just grab it. So if I'm going for a particular kind of analog kind of vibe for a song, I'm just going to get all of my SSL plugins, all my SSL channel strips across the whole mix, and I'm going to do my mix that way. So I'll maybe have like one instance of the SSL-E channel across every channel. And then I'll maybe have like the Retro Mix Legends Mix Effects Brit console on the master as well, so that I've got the console simulation at the master fader end as well as on every channel. And so I'm just using the EQ and the compressor from the channel strip, and so I'm doing channel strip mixing effectively. So that way I don't have a whole lot of plugins instantiated or in use. And again, I'll have a couple of reverbs and a couple of delays, and that's all I have. And then I'm doing sends. I don't instantiate ambient effects on channels, typically. I would say 99.7% of the time, reverbs and delays are in sends. They're not directly on an insert of a channel. Occasionally they are. And if I know I'm going to do that for a particular reason, a particular effect that I want unique to that particular channel, I'll print that reverb. And then it's done. It's out of the way, and I don't have to think about it anymore, and it's not using up any processing. Because, as Bobby Booth correctly notes here, he says some third-party plugins are very high in CPU use. Yes, they are. Morton is here. Hello, Morton. Welcome. I think this might be your first time here. And if it is, I'm glad you're here. And welcome to the show. Morton says, do you use metronome? Yes, I do. As I demonstrated just a few minutes ago when I was recording that little vocal thing to answer Dwayne's question from earlier. Yeah, I use the metronome. I use it all the time, actually. Metronomes are great. Metronomes are possibly one of the most important and most useful music tools we have. They're great for practice. In fact, they are phenomenal for practice. And you can actually use a metronome very creatively. Not just so it's like ticking on each beat of the bar. Typically what I do, if I'm doing something that's at 120 beats a minute, I'll actually set the metronome to 60. To half time. But here's the thing. I start to play in such a way that the tick of the metronome is ticking on beats 2 and 4. And I do that not just to keep me in time, but also help me to shape my phrasing. So my phrasing emphasizes beats 2 and 4. Because most of the time I play jazz or I play funk or I play R&B, and I like to have the backbeat click rather than clicking on all 4 beats. I find it much easier to keep in time if it's just clicking on 2 and 4. So I tend to have the metronome set to halftime in that respect. Now, obviously, when you're working in Studio One, currently you can't do that, unfortunately. But what you can do in Studio One with the metronome is you can actually play with the balance quite a bit. So let's take, for example, what we have here, with this song, I'm going to mute the audio that I recorded, and I'm just going to play the metronome. And you can see here that you've got the accent and then the beats and then the offbeat. You can actually change this balance. At the moment, that's beating on every beat of the bar. Now that's the offbeat. Sounds like it isn't, but let me bring up the beat here. Now, to your ear, that's going to sound like it's flipped. And it's going to sound like the offbeat is the downbeat and the beat is now the offbeat. I'm going to play it for a little bit longer because it's going to take your mind a little bit of time to flip it. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So if I want just the upbeats, the ands of the beats, I can turn the main beat off and just have the accent. So there's lots of different things you can do here. You can also change these sounds. Cool thing is you can also load up your own sounds. So you can find where the metronome sounds are. And it says here, hang on a second, see if I can get that thing to pop up again. Drag file here to select additional sound. So if you've got some WAV sounds in a folder, you can drag and drop these to these different things here, and you can have a different sound. So you can have like a burp on the accent, the downbeat, the beat 1, and then you can have a fart on the main beats, and then the upbeats could be, I don't know, a chicken cluck or something. Whatever you want it to be. Typically, this is kind of how I have the metronome set up. So it's a little bit staggered like this. Now, the cool thing is, if you are in a different time signature, like, for example, 6, if I change this to 6/8, what should happen now? See, it says here, play 6/8 click like 2 times 3/8. One, two, three, four, five, six. See how we got an accent on beat 1 and beat 3. All right, and yes, there is a cowbell. So you can change this as much as you want. It depends upon what you're using it for and why, basically. So let's go back over here. That's a great question. Neil says, I guess I should maybe break my well-established habit of having at least one level meter and one spectrum meter, oftentimes more on every single channel. Yeah, I'm not going to knock what you do at all, Neil. I would just kind of ask yourself why. Why do you need those? Why do you need a level meter? Why do you need a spectrum meter? So, yeah. Ask yourself why. Let's see. Neil says, yeah, you got the offbeat too damn loud, you crazy Scott. Yeah, I like doing that. No cowbell. Everyone needs a cowbell. Oh, Final Saga. Definitely everybody needs a cowbell. And the louder that cowbell, the better. Carl says, does a WAV file contain a sound wave? Then pronounce the darn thing with a long A. No. I will not do that. All right, we are nearly at the end. So if we got, you know what? I'll take another question. If you guys have got one more question, I will take one more. We got 23 people in here, which is freaking awesome. But we've only got 20 likes. It'd be great if all 23 of you could just click that like button just because. Just because. Because actually likes are really helpful. The more likes there are on a video or a live stream, then the more likely the YouTube algorithm is going to recommend this video, this live stream, to their homepage. And when that happens, somebody might just really dig it and they might click on it and they might watch it. And from having never discovered me before, they might click on it, they might discover what I do, and then they might go, oh, this guy's really great. Or this guy's really bad and hilarious, and I want to go and mock him. And they'll subscribe to the channel so that they can do that. Either way, it kind of works out well for me. Neil says every WAV file deserves a level meter and a spectrum meter so that so much analysis can be done that no song ever gets finished. Yeah, and no mix ever gets done because you're spending so much time looking at the pretty spectrum meter, especially if you put the spectrum meter in that pretty waterfall view. That waterfall view is mesmerizing. I could just sit and watch it all day because it's mesmerizing. And certainly when I require maybe more of my pain relief meds than normal, and that happens in the winter, I could maybe sit there and watch it for 2 days. Martin says, what can I do if the ground power is bad and microphone picking up the noise? Wrong forum? No, not the wrong forum. If you have bad power, then you would be well to get something like a power conditioner or something like that, and have everything kind of routed through a power conditioner, something that can clean up your ground issues, and shield your cables. Make sure your cables are shielded. That way they should, ostensibly, they should, in theory anyway, avoid those grounding issues, and you shouldn't get hum in your mic. So make sure all of your connections are good. Make sure your cables are shielded, and make sure your cables are in good care, that you're looking after your cables, that you're not like tying them up in weird knots when you're not using them. Don't do that to your cables. Coil them in a nice loop. That way, all the wires inside the cable will not get squished to Hades and back. And that's where you can get some definite for sure hum. So I would say I would say make sure that you have talk to an electrical engineer and see if there is a way that the grounding issue can be resolved. And maybe think about a power conditioner. Maybe also think about isolating your audio so that your audio cables are not going anywhere near any power cables, including power extension cables. You know, the ones where you've got those multi-socket things and then that's connected to the wall. Make sure you don't have any audio cables, including your microphone cables, crossing over the top of those. That way, I mean, shielded cables these days shouldn't be an issue, but just in case, keep your audio separated, your audio cables separated from your power cables so that they don't go anywhere near each other. And that will certainly help you. You can use old APC units with bad batteries to still filter your input power. Yeah, okay. Never heard of that before, but that's all good. Neil says, in all seriousness, I use these to get a visual on the effects of my effects and to set output levels on those effects properly. I can totally see the wisdom of wanting to make sure that you are balancing the level as you go from the output of one plugin into the input of the next one, so that you make sure that you're not fooling yourself as you go through your plugin chain, so that you don't have anything that's actually intrinsically just increasing the volume and you think, that actually sounds better, when it really doesn't. So make sure you level match between each stage, going through EQ into compression or compression into EQ and vice versa. So yeah, I can see why maybe you might want to do that. But for me, I don't use any of those kind of things. I really don't use any of those kind of things. I don't use any level meters or any spectrum analysis plugins at all. I use these flappy things on the side of my head. And I'm not saying you don't, Neil, but I mean, that's what I rely upon. I rely upon listening and using the bypass button on plugins to check and make sure that I'm level matching at each stage. That's how I do it anyway. Each to their own. If you want to do it visually, then that's great. I don't. I much prefer to use my ears and make sure that I'm checking with my ears rather than my eyes, because eyes can be deceiving. For sure. Matt says, thank you, Jonny, Lipsham and Co. Wisdom will prevail. Wisdom always prevails. Wisdom always wins, even when it doesn't seem like it is. And even if it doesn't seem like wisdom is going to, wisdom will always win. Wisdom is smart. That's why it's called wisdom. Wisdom plays the long game. Wisdom is not concerned about short-term victories. Wisdom is concerned about the long-term gains and the long-term benefits. So sometimes it looks like wisdom is not doing anything. And sometimes it looks like everything is going to the toilet. And I'm not just talking about politics here. I'm talking about all sorts of things. I'm talking about, how we manage our lives, how we manage our careers, how we manage our music making. Wisdom plays the long game. And so you want to be on the side of wisdom. So I think the pursuit of wisdom is definitely something that has possibly more value than anything else in the world. It's definitely, to me, wisdom is more valuable than any currency, than any amount of money, than any amount of gold or silver or precious stones. Wisdom trumps all of it. And on that note, Kyle says, you def want a level stage or the drummer will slide off to one side. You know what? I have had that happen to me in the middle of a drum solo. Yes, it did. What I didn't realize was that there was a 9-foot drop from where I was on the stage to some uplights that were down below. And I landed on top of those lights. And let's just say it was hot. 1 minute I was playing drums, next minute I completely disappeared from view, and everyone was just like, where the hell did the drummer go? And then they heard a crash. Yes, that was me crashing onto a bunch of extremely hot lights. Anyway, you probably all, I'm ending the show now, but you probably all want to go, we want to know more about this hilarious story. No, I'm not going to do that. Neil says, I think I should continue to do it visually, but I should perhaps not leave the level and spectrum meters permanently sitting there everywhere using resources. I think that's probably the best balance for you. From the way you've described how you're using them and what you're using them for, I think definitely that's probably going to be the best solution for you. Is, use them when you need to use them, dump them when you don't. Would be my view. Anyway, that's the end of the show, folks. Thank you very much for joining me for tonight's show. You guys rock. You are the best. And there's a great bunch of questions there. To everybody who is in the tornado-warned areas or storm-warned areas, take great care. Heed all the storm warnings. Heed all the storm advice. Get into your safe places if you need to. If you have a storm cellar, get down into them. Do what you need to do to protect yourself and your loved ones and those that are your neighbors and those that are in your community as well. And until next time, I will see you on Wednesday for Songwriting Simplified. So if you've got questions about songwriting, lyric writing, composing, arranging, music theory, writing for strings, writing for horns, backing vocals, all of that stuff, come back here on Wednesday at the same time, and we will deal with your questions to do with all of that then. So until then, folks, good night. Turn the click off.
Bye.